Delay. Welcome to the AWAM Tibetan Buddhist Institute and our Sunday meditation hour. Today we are going to be doing our regular Nundro practice at the beginning, and then we will be doing a Dharma talk on the third of the three statements of Garab Dorje. So we will conclude that today. Hopefully there'll be enough time. There's quite a bit yet to say about that. And so we begin today with our sound of the conch to invite all the Buddhas in the Bodhisattvas to join with us with their loving kindness and compassion. Page 1 of the practice manual, and for those of you online, if you don't have a copy, you can get it from our website at awaminstitute.org and go to the resources page and you can download it there. So we begin with the blessing mantra. Om Sambara Sambara Bhimana Sara Mahazambaba Humpi Soha. Om Sambara Sambara Bhimana Sara Mahazambaba Humpi Soha. Om Sambara Sambara Bhimana Sara Mahazambaba Humpi Soha. Homage to Samattabhadra and Samattabhadri, because I suffer due to my own actions, and I now have this precious human life without knowing when I will die. I will now engage in virtuous actions for the benefit of all sentient beings with joy and devotion. Therefore, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Vajrasattva and Vajratopa appear above me, purifying me and all beings and phenomena with nectar from the place of their union. Continue on page 2 with the 100-syllable mantra. Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benza Sato Tenopa Tishtadrido Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anurakto Me Bawa Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Karma Sutta Me Titam Shriya Kuru Hom Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Tawa Tata Kata Benze Mame Munzan Benze Bawa Mahasamaya Sato Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benza Sato Tenopa Tishtadrido Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Murakto Me Bawa Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Karma Sutta Me Titam Shriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Tawa Tata Kata Benze Mame Munzan Benze Bawa Mahasamaya Sato Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benza Sato Tenopa Tishtadrido Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Nurakto Me Bawa Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Karma Sutta Me Titam Shriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tata Kata Benze Mame Mutsa Benze Bawa Mahasamaya Sato In the mandala offering. Om Ahom. In the Dharmakaya pure realm, Dharma Dhatu equality, the realms of the five Sambhogakaya families self-appear unobstructedly, along with the array of Namanakaya pure realms that fill all of space. All this I offer as Samattabhadra's clouds of great bliss. Om Ratna Mandala Puta Mega Samudra Saparana Samaya Ahom. Continue with the short 7-limb prayer. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, requesting, and praying for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. And then home. In the northwest of the land of Oregon, in the heart of a lotus flower, endowed with the most marvelous attainments, you are renowned as the lotus born, surrounded by many hosted dakinis. Following in your footsteps, I pray to you, come and bless me with your grace. Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Home. In the northwest of the land of Oregon, in the heart of a lotus flower, endowed with the most marvelous attainments, you are renowned as a lotus born, surrounded by many hosted dakinis. Following in your footsteps, I pray to you, come and bless me with your grace. Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Home. In the northwest of the land of Oregon, in the heart of a lotus flower, endowed with the most marvelous attainments, you are renowned as the lotus born, surrounded by many hosted dakinis. Following in your footsteps, I pray to you, come and bless me with your grace. Guru Pema Siddhi Home. And then we recite the mantra with one mala. Om Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om 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 Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om 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 Ahum Benzaguru Bemazidi Hom. 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 Continue at the top of page 3. Light radiates from the Guru's 4 places into my 4 places, purifying my body, speech, mind, and all subtle obscurations, granting the 4 empowerments and planting the 4 seeds. The Guru dissolves into light and merges inseparably into myself. So dissolve the visualization, just rest in the natural state of pure awareness. If any distractions arise, just let them go. Refocus your attention. We're going to make this one only about a minute this morning because the Dharma talk's a little bit longer, so saving some time for that. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are on our 3rd talk on the 3 statements of Garab Dorje. So this is the 3rd statement of Garab Dorje that we're looking at today. And there is also a colophon, which I think is some important information in it, so we'll look at that as well at the end. And so first to review just a little bit of what we have looked at before. The actual 3 statements are very, very concise. Each one is just a very short sentence. And so the first one says, introducing directly the face of Rigpa itself. So that is the initial pith instruction into what to do, and we have the experience of Rigpa, that direct emptiness kind of an experience as a part of that. And once we do that, then we go on to the second one, which is deciding upon one thing and one thing only, which is the Rigpa, where he also talks in here in his commentary about Dharmakaya, which is the truth body, literally speaking, but it's not really a body, even though it's sometimes represented that way, but it's really talking about the ultimate truth, of the ultimate nature of things. And so in the second one, we are doing the training to get to the point where we're there all the time, which then becomes the third statement, basically, confidence directly in the liberation arising thoughts. So we implement that constantly, whether we're meditating formally or during our daily activities. We're in that kind of a constant flow of the Dharmakaya and recognizing the context of everything else that is going on in our experience. So Patrul Rinpoche wrote a very short and concise commentary, so I'll read through that one first. At that point, whether attachment or aversion, happiness or sorrow, all momentary thoughts, each and every one. So it means we do have thoughts. It's not like we've totally wiped out having thoughts. Upon recognition, leave not a trace behind. For recognize the Dharmakaya in which they are freed, or Dharmakaya, or as I mentioned, Rigpa. And just as writing vanishes on water, so if we write something on water with our finger, then it disappears, arising and liberation become natural and continuous. So we're getting to the point now where it's ongoing. It's that continuous flow that I mentioned. And whatever arises is food for the bare Rigpa emptiness. So it becomes food for practice, if you will. Whatever stirs in the mind is the inner power of the Dharmakaya king, the master, if you will. Leaving no trace and intimately pure, what joy. The way things arise may be the same as before, as manifestations, but the difference lies in the way they are liberated. That is the key. Without this, meditation is but the path of delusion. When you have it, there's non-meditation, the state of Dharmakaya. And sometimes in the actual practice of that, it's in the foreground. That's really what our focus is on Dharmakaya. But at other times, we have to do other kind of things in our life to exist. So we sometimes describe that as being more like in the background, especially in the beginning, but we don't let go of it. Eventually, the two of those come together as one taste, we refer to it, and so there's no difference between the two as a part of that. So the third vital point is confidence directly in the liberation of rising thoughts. So then he gives the word-by-word commentary here of what I just read. So now at such times as these, if there is not the confidence of the method of liberation and your meditation is merely relaxing in the stillness of mind, you will only get sidetracked into the samadhi of the gods. Such a meditation will not be able to overcome your attachment or anger. It will not be able to put a stop to the flow of karmic formations, nor will it be able to bring you to deep confidence of direct certainty. Therefore, this method of liberation is of vital importance. What is more, when burning attachment is aroused towards some object of desire or violent anger towards some object of aversion, when you feel joy about favorable circumstances, material possessions and the like, or you are afflicted by sorrow on account of unfavorable circumstances, things like illness, no matter what happens, at that moment the power of your Rigpa is aroused. And so it is vital to recognize the wisdom that is the ground for liberation. So this literally becomes a ground for liberation. At that point, and this is the quotation, at that point, whether attachment or aversion, happiness or sorrow. So that is the point we've talked about before of contact. So we have sensory abilities, we have an object, and when the two of those go together, that's the point of contact. Following contact, from that, we begin to develop a sense of attraction to something or aversion to something. We begin to judge things, or they can be neutral as well. But we tend to talk about the extremes, which are the real problems of those. So then he continues, besides, if your practice lacks the key point of liberation upon arising, whatever subtle thoughts creep unnoticed into your mind, We have to be paying attention when thoughts arise. They will accumulate more samsaric karma. So if we let them arise and establish themselves without even noticing them, that becomes the ground for more samsaric karma. So the crucial point here is to maintain this simultaneous arising and liberation with every thought that arises, whether gross or subtle, so that they leave no trace behind. That trace behind is the karma, good or bad. That's what's leaving the trace is referring to. All momentary thoughts, each and every one, is the quote. Therefore, whatever thoughts arise, you do not allow them to proliferate into a welter of subtle delusion, while at the same time you do not apply some narrow-minded mindfulness. Instead, without ever separating from a natural, genuine mindfulness, recognize the true nature of whatever thoughts arise and sustain this liberation upon arising that leaves no trace, like writing on the surface of water. So here he's differentiating between two kinds of mindfulness, and he doesn't elaborate very much, so it's not entirely clear to me exactly how he's distinguishing between them. But a fairly common way to do that is that basic mindfulness is where you're just being mindful of objects. I'm seeing something, and so I recognize that I'm seeing something. I'm hearing a sound, so I'm recognizing that I'm hearing a sound, and so forth. So it's a very sensory-oriented kind of things. It can include mind in the sense of there's a thought that pops up, maybe I see something and I like it, so I recognize that I like it. But I don't go beyond that. I don't try to overcome those kind of experiences. So he says, upon recognition in the second form of mindfulness, what he calls genuine mindfulness, then we're sustaining this idea of being in that state of liberation, and it continuously dissolves, it disappears. So he says, upon recognition, leave not a trace behind. If at this point the arising thoughts are not purified, dissolving as they liberate themselves, the mere recognition of thoughts on its own will not be able to cut the chain of karma that perpetrates delusion. So at the very same instant as you recognize by seeing the true nature of the thought nakedly, this is where we begin judging things, you will simultaneously identify the wisdom with which you are familiar from before. By resting in that state, thoughts are purified, dissolving so that they leave no trace, and that dissolution is a crucial point. He keeps making that over and over. That's the critical point here. So we're trying to recognize things at that point of contact and before we make judgments about what something is, good or bad, because that's the point at which it begins to develop in the form of karma. Okay? So the quote for that is, for recognize the Dharmakaya in which they are freed. So in Dharmakaya itself, there is no object of anything. It's more of a transcendent kind of knowledge. Like when we recite the Heart Sutra, it's not this, not that, not something else. It's no longer a thought or anything. It just is that natural state. So he continues, to take an example, writing or drawing on water, the very instant it is written, it dissolves. The writing and its disappearance are simultaneous. Likewise, as soon as thoughts arise, liberation is simultaneous. And so it becomes an unbroken flow of self-arising and self-liberating. And he quotes, and just as writing vanishes on water. So that's the metaphor he's using. And so if the thoughts arise, but we allow them to stick around, that's when it becomes problematic. But if they arise and we recognize them and let them naturally just dissolve on their own, like vanishing in water, then that is the state that we are after, staying in the Dharmakaya, staying in the Rigpa. And he continues, and so by not suppressing the risings, by allowing whatever arises to arise, any thoughts that do arise are actually purified into their own fundamental nature. They're fundamental nature being going back into this emptiness of Dharmakaya, if you will. You must hold to this method of integrating everything into the path as the essence of the practice. So in this form of practice, the essence of how to do it is that noticing things that arise and letting them dissolve immediately. So the quote here is, arising and liberation become natural and continuous. So this is the real key point of the third statement, is allowing them to, having trained in the second one, to get to a point where it's a continuous process. Like watching a movie or looking in a movie, but knowing that that's what you are doing. Okay, so it's not just looking in a mirror like in the morning and get up and comb your hair or something like that, but you're just paying attention to the reflection. Here, you're noticing, oh, that is a reflection that I'm looking at. It's not me. Okay, so that kind of thing. You're watching the movie. Oh, I am watching a movie. This is acting going on, and things like that. So we're paying more attention to the process of what is happening as a part of it, and it becomes, after a while, somewhat dreamlike. The Buddha talked during his enlightenment that it was like awakening from a dream. And so here too, it's a little bit like awakening from the dream, but here the dream keeps going on and we recognize that that's what's happening. And so he continues, by applying the exercise of Dharmakaya to your thoughts in this way, whatever thoughts occur only serve to strengthen the Rigpa. So that becomes food for the Rigpa. And also, however gross the thoughts of the five poisons are, anger, delusion, desire, jealousy, pride, however gross those thoughts of five poisons are, that much more vivid and sharp is the Rigpa in which they are liberated. So as those things as the thoughts become stronger, so does Rigpa, in order to deal with them, to, you might say, even conquer them. And so the quote there is, and whatever arises is food for the bare Rigpa emptiness. The next part of the commentary says, whatever thoughts may stir, they all arise from all-penetrating true face of Rigpa itself, as is own inner power. Whenever they occur, if you simply abide in this without accepting or rejecting, then they are liberated at the very instant they arise, and they are never outside the flow of the Dharmakaya. Again, it's a sense of flow, and because they are dealt with at that point, immediately they arise, just like trying to write in water. There is the writing in the water, or else you wouldn't have the dissolution of that into the water. So there is the arising of the thought, but it then dissolves. So his quote is, whatever stirs in the mind is the inner power of the Dharmakaya king. A metaphor of the Dharmakaya being like a king in ultimate form. So when thoroughly trained in this way, there's no effort required. It becomes natural. So actually untraining karmic tendencies. So we train the mind, but in a sense we're also untraining our natural or previous way of looking at things from that contact and that judgment that normally we would have. So the next part of his comments, thoughts in the mind, the delusory perceptions of ignorance, are pure within the expanse of Dharmakaya. So as long as it's within the expanse of Dharmakaya, it's actually pure, because it hasn't been judged one way or the other, which is what is referred to in Buddhism as being impure. And so within that expanse of uninterrupted clear light, now he's throwing another word, we've seen it before, but clear light is not about clear in the sense of transparent, literal sense, or even light in the sense of like a light bulb, but it's luminous clarity. Okay? So this uninterrupted clear light, luminous clarity, whatever thoughts stir and arise are by their very nature empty. So leaving no trace and innately pure. What joy. And he continues, when we have become used to integrating thoughts into your path like this over a long period of time, so developing a habit of doing this continuously, thoughts arise as meditation. The boundary between stillness and movement falls away, and as a result, nothing that arises ever harms or disturbs your dwelling in awareness. So then we reach that point where we're never disturbed from that. The Dharmakaya, the Rigpa, is continuous. The way things, the quote, the way things arise may be the same as before. So we become integrated into the Dharmakaya, the Rigpa, the clear light. He continues, at that juncture, the way, the thoughts, the energy of Rigpa arise as joy and sorrow, hope and fear may be similar to the way they arise in an ordinary person. Yet, with ordinary people, their experience is a very solid one of suppressing or indulging, with the result that they accumulate karmic formations and fall prey to attachment and aggression, that point of contact we were talking about. On the other hand, for the Dzogchen yogin, thoughts are liberated the moment they arise. And then this is a quote that's very common here in Dzogchen. At the beginning, arising thoughts are liberated upon being recognized, like meeting an old friend. You recognize this old friend. Oh, hi, a thought. Okay? The thought is the friend. In the middle, thoughts are liberated by themselves, like a snake uncoiling its own knots. So if the snake gets tied into a knot, they just wiggle off right out of it, naturally. And so here, in the middle, the thoughts liberate themselves. There's no special effort required anymore. And then at the end, thoughts are liberated without causing either benefit or harm. So it even transcends the development of karma, like a thief breaking into an empty house. Nothing there. Okay? He continues, so Dzogchen yogin possesses a vital point of the methods of liberation such as these. Therefore, and then he's quoting, but the difference lies in the way they are liberated. That is the key. That is why it is said to know how to meditate, but not how to liberate. How does that differ from meditation of the gods, which you referred to earlier? What this is, that those who put their trust in meditation, which lacks this vital point of the method of liberation and is merely some state of mental quiescence or calm, will only stray into meditation states of the higher realms being the God realms. People who claim that it is sufficient simply to recognize stillness and movement are no different than ordinary people with their deluded thinking. So that's something that is sometimes talked about in forms of meditation, stillness versus of movement. We recognize different qualities of something, in this case, stillness and movement. But again, he's saying that is deluded. And as for those who give it all kinds of labels, like emptiness and Dharmakaya, the basic flaw is the remedy is exposed when it fails to hold up under the misfortune or difficulty they meet. And so his quote, without this, meditation is but a path of delusion. So the basic flaw is that it fails because we are only looking at the labels that we have associated with it, and then automatically we begin associating those with, hey, I like this, or I dislike that, and so forth. That's the delusion. So liberation on arising, self-liberation, naked liberation, whatever name you give it. This is kind of interesting because he's just talking about let's not label things, and here he is giving labels to things. This manner of liberation, where thoughts liberate themselves and are purified without a trace, is the same crucial point, explicitly to show this self-liberation. It is the extraordinary specialty of the natural Zopa Chenpo. So this is one of the problems that is characteristic in some of the advanced levels of practice in Buddhism. We get into a philosophical dispute about, can you say anything about this ultimate or absolute, or can you not? Okay, and so this is why this comes up, just as he's expressing it here. On one hand, he's saying, well, you really shouldn't do that, and on the other hand, he's doing it. And we find that argument between the Shentong and the Prasangika schools of philosophy doing exactly the same thing. Where one is saying you can't say anything about it, and the other one is saying, well, you should say something about it, or if they have no path, they don't know what to do or where to go. You need a roadmap in order to help get there. They both have their merit, and there are some ways of kind of combining them together. And so he goes on, and so if you possess this key point, then whatever negative emotions or thoughts arise simply turn into Dharmakaya. All delusory thoughts are purified as wisdom. All harmful circumstances arise as friends, or they dissolve as enemies. All negative emotions become the path. Samsara is purified in its own natural state without your having to renounce it. The process of renouncing is just another thought, another process. And so we just let it happen. And you are freed from the chains of both conditioned existence and the state of peace as concepts. You have arrived at such complete and final state there is no effort, nothing to achieve, and nothing left to do. And so the quote here is, when you have it, there's non-meditation, the state of Dharmakaya. So maybe he's going a little bit far in the way that he's describing this, at least for most of us. So it infers kind of a total neutrality in all things, a little bit like being a zombie perhaps, no brain, no mind, versus a middle way that the Buddha tended to talk about. So Dharmakaya is, in fact, a state of peace. The Buddha talked about this, and simplicity and luminosity. And so there are those things. Now, he'll come back to this for us, fortunately, here in a little bit in his commentary. If you do not have confidence of such a way of liberation, you can claim your view is high and your meditation is deep. But it will not really help your mind, and nor will it prove a remedy to your negative emotions. Therefore, it is not the true path. Now, he recognizes there are multiple paths, that this is just one of them. It's not the only path, but it does have some key points that transcend the other forms of meditation. On the other hand, if you do have a key point of self-arising and self-liberating, in quote marks, then without even the minutest attitude of high view or the notion of deep meditation, it is quite impossible for your mind not to be liberated from the bonds of dualistic grasping. The house is empty. Okay? So, the words, though, can be helpful, as I was just describing. When you go to the fabled island of gold, which is a metaphor that's sometimes described in different of the sutras of the Buddha, you can never find ordinary earth or stones. Everything is gold, so there's no ordinary rocks or dirt or anything like that, however hard you look. In just the same way, stillness, movement, and thoughts all arise now as meditation, not as stillness and thoughts, delusions, and so forth. So this alone is the measure to determine whether your practice has hit the mark or not. So the third vital point is confidence directly in the liberation of rising thoughts. So that's the third statement of Garab Dorje. So all of it is meditation. It's not real as ordinarily perceived. We still have the thoughts, but they arise as meditation. It's kind of the way I would summarize what he's describing here. So we talked about having 3 different levels of meditators, then how we could apply this in that context. It doesn't differ a great deal each time. So for the beginner, someone who is comfortable with basic forms of meditation like shamatha or some of the dhyanas and so forth, again, it's good if you can to go outdoors, find a place to sit without distractions, just relax to begin with. Take a deep breath in, and then on the out breath, relax your brain, and then the rest of your body slowly all the way down, okay, into stillness. And then you just let go of the stillness itself. This is the Dharmakaya. So instead of that loud ping creating a startle reflex, we do it in a more relaxed, gentle manner. And so then, as a result, everything, all sensory and mental formations, experiences that arise, are like reflections in the mirror, just an experience of your mind. So then you do this as long as you can. If you need to, you just repeat it. For an intermediate person who's done deity kinds of practice, we dissolve everything into emptiness. We focus on the experience beyond names and concepts. Just relax into the flow of Dharmakaya, like when we dissolve the image into just emptiness, a little bit like we did with the Guru Yoga and Guru Rinpoche. We dissolved him into the natural state of pure awareness. That's what we're doing here. Just relax into the flow of Dharmakaya. Commit yourself to abiding in the flow of Dharmakaya then at all times, including breaks in practice and post-meditation. So that's where this becomes significant. We've done it before, we've recognized it before, but now we're trying to get to the point where it's always there. So that's the hardest part, trying to create these new neural pathways in our brain to help us develop that, to form these new habits of practice. Now, for the advanced person who's more familiar with some non-conceptual forms of practice, Dzogchen Trepcho or Mahamudra and so forth, always abide in the flow of non-conceptual Dharmakaya day and night without effort. Commit yourself to the flow of Dharmakaya. Let go, let be. When anything, sensory or mental experiences arises, that point of contact, it just is. No attachment, no aversion. Focus on all experiences as manifestation within Dharmakaya is none other than Dharmakaya itself. So that's the ultimate goal here. So it's the way it is, always and always, if you will. Those don't work? Talk to your Lama. Ask them for some assistance in doing some of these. But like I said, this isn't the only way to do this, and it's not for everybody as a part of this. We still need some other things like altruism, loving kindness, compassion, and so forth. Very important parts of this. So in the Colophon, also from Patrul Rinpoche, he says, for the view which has the three vital points, meditation, the union of wisdom and love, here it comes, is accompanied by action common to all the bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are very interested in helping others attain these states as well as themselves. Were all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future to confer, no instruction would they find greater than this, brought out as the treasure from the depth of transcendent insight. So beyond concepts or thoughts. By the Kirtan of Dharmakaya, the inner power of Rigpa, nothing like ordinary treasures of earth and stone, for it is final testament of Garab Dorje. The essence of the wisdom mind of the three transmissions, if you recall back in the beginning, he talked about the transmission from Garab Dorje first to Longchenpa, and Jigme Lingpa, and then his own teacher. So from Garab Dorje to Longchenpa, Lingpa, and then his teacher, those were the three transmissions there. It is entrusted to my heart disciples, sealed to be secret. It is profound in meaning, my heart's words, the heart mind. In the words of my heart, the crucial key point. This crucial point, never hold it cheap. Never let its instructions slip away from you. This is the special teaching of the wise and glorious king, Samatbai, in our picture over here. And so he gives a word-for-word commentary on this colophon as well, so that we make sure that we understand it. These three key points are the unerring essence which brings the view, meditation, action, and fruition of natural Dzogchen all together within the state of all-penetrating awareness of Rigpa. So, in fact, this constitutes the pith instructions for meditation and action, as well as for the view. However, this is not some abstract concept about which, to use Dharma terminology of the mainstream textual tradition, a definitive conclusion is reached after evaluating it with scripture, logic, and reasoning, which is the traditional way that this is done. So we have lots and lots of commentaries on these processes and the teachings that were given by the Buddha and some of his primary disciples. Rather, once you actually realize wisdom itself directly and in all its nakedness, the nakedness is all of this other baggage that gets leaped onto it through these other processes. So that is the view of the wisdom of Rigpa. Since all the many views and meditations have but a single taste, there is no contradiction in explaining the three vital points as the practice of the view. So this is the view. And so that's another way you can think of it, is the view is Dharmakaya. And so the view is the most important in the Eightfold Path of the Buddha. He starts with the view in most cases. Sometimes it gets rearranged in a different pattern, but he usually starts with the view. And so if we understand that view, that leads to everything else. And very important. And in this case, it's perhaps even more important because this is the whole thing. The whole eight factors are right there in one. And so for the view, which has the three vital points, that they're all embedded. Practice such as this is an infallible point of the path of primordial purity in the natural Dzogchen, the very pinnacle of the 9 graduated vehicles. So in the Tantra tradition, both the new schools and the Nyingma or old school, there's 9 different phases of practice, and it's important that we have the background and an understanding of that. Otherwise, when we get to Dzogchen or Mahamudra or something like that, we really don't have the foundation upon which to truly understand. And so it is very important that we have that as well. Just as it is impossible for a king to travel without its couriers, in the same time, the key points of all yanas serve as steps and supports for the Dzogchen path. And that's why it's important to have that foundation rather than just trying to jump directly into Dzogchen by itself. Not only this, but when you see the face of the lamp of naturally rising wisdom, the primordial purity of Rigpa, its power will blaze up as the insight that comes from meditation, from more traditional forms of meditation. Then the expanse of your wisdom swells like a rising summer river. I've had a few of those lately. While the nature of emptiness dawns as great compassion, so infusing you with a loving compassion, without any limit or bias. This is how it is. And so his quotation, meditation and the union of wisdom and love. So he didn't talk about this in the 3 statements, but now he's bringing this back into that. So we need the foundation, which is where we find the love, the wisdom, the compassion, altruism, all of those kind of things. Without it, it would be Buddhism without half of, or even more, of what Buddhism is really all about. That's why we need that foundation. Once this key point on the path, the unity of emptiness and compassion, is directly realized in the ocean-like actions of bodhisattvas, all included within the path of the 6 paramitas, another set of teachings, probably the main teaching on the path of the bodhisattva, the bodhisattvas being those who make a commitment to achieving liberation for self and all other sentient beings, arise as its own natural energy, like the rays shining from the sun. Since action is related to the accumulation of merit, Anything you do will be for the benefit of others. So merit here is viewed as something that we're doing to help benefit others, helping you to avoid seeking peace and happiness for yourself alone, and so deviating from the correct view. So the idea here is, if we just do it for ourselves, that's incomplete. We need to include trying to do it for the benefit of all beings in order for it to be complete. So he quotes here, is accompanied by the action common to all the Bodhisattvas. And then he continues, this kind of view, meditation and action, is the very core of the enlightened vision of all the Buddhas who ever came, who are here now, or who will ever come. And so, the quote, were all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future to confer. Continuing, the supreme peak of all the yanas, the key point of the path of the Vajra heart essence of the Ningtik, the quintessence of all fruition, nothing surpasses this. And so, the quote, no instruction would they find greater than this. And he goes on, the real meaning of what is expressed in the instruction of the heart essence of the fifth instructions of the lineage, it is certain. Yet, even the lines that express it, these few words, should arise too out of the creative power of Rigpa. So he's saying all of these words that he is giving us now also arise out of Rigpa, and he let them dissolve once again. By the Turtan of Dharmakaya, a Turtan is somebody who's finding these hidden away treasures. And so he's talking about this as Dharmakaya itself is a Turtan, and the treasures are all of these other Dharma instructions that arise out of that, and then we also let them dissolve. The inner power of Rigpa. I have not the slightest experience of the actual meaning behind these words as a result of the wisdom that comes from meditation. Yet, by hearing an unerring oral transmission of my holy master, I cleared away all doubts completely with the wisdom that comes from listening, and then came to a conclusive understanding through the wisdom born of contemplation. Whereupon I composed this, and so it was, brought out, the quote, brought out as a treasure from the depth of transcendental light. It is like any ordinary kind of worldly treasure which might simply bring temporary relief from poverty. And the quote, nothing like ordinary treasures of earth and stone. And then these three vital points of the view, known as striking the vital point of the three statements, were given by the Nirmanakaya Garab Dorje from within a cloud of light in the sky as he passed into nirvana, to the great master Manjushri Mitra, who is Garab Dorje's student. These are the very pith instructions through which their realization became inseparable, for it is the final testament of Garab Dorje. It was through penetrating the essential meaning of this instruction that the omniscient king of Dharma, Longchen Rabjam, or Longchenpa, during his lifetime directly realized the wisdom mind of primordial purity, where all phenomena are exhausted and so awakened to complete and perfect Buddhahood. Actually appearing in his wisdom body to the Vajradhara Jigme Lingpa, he blessed him in the manner of the sign transmission of a Vidyadhara. And so Jigme Lingpa had these visions in meditation of instructions given by Longchenpa, and even meditated in his cave for a period of time over 3 years. And so he came up with these things and passed them along. And then so from him in turn, by the means of the transmission of mouth to ears, oral instructions, our own kind root master, Jigme Gawe Nugyo, who was Patrul Rinpoche's teacher, received the introduction through this instruction and encountered the true nature of reality face to face. And this is the instruction I heard from Jigme Gawe Nugyo while he was present among us as the glorious protector of all beings. That is why it is the essence of the wisdom mind of the three transmissions. So pith instructions such as these are the finest of gold, like the very core of the heart. It would be a pity to teach them to people who would not put them into practice. This is a fairly common kind of instruction in Buddhism, that it should only be given to people who are going to use them, that it's going to be meaningful and helpful to them. And so he says that. But then again, it would be a pity, too, not to teach them to a person who would cherish these instructions like his or her own life, put their essential meaning into practice, and attain Buddhahood in a single lifetime. So it's not very helpful. It's not good to give it to people who aren't going to use it, where it's not beneficial or helpful. But you don't want to hide it away and keep it from those kind of people who can benefit from it as well. And we never know for sure what's going to happen, because at one particular moment in time, maybe it's not going to be beneficial, maybe you're not interested, but another day down the road sometime, all of a sudden, I remember that, and there it is, and it is meaningful for you. So then he has a quote here, a little verse. It is entrusted to my heart disciples, sealed to be secret. It is profound in meaning, my heart's words. In the words of my heart, the crucial key point. This crucial point, do not let it go to waste. Never let this instruction slip away from you. So with this brief commentary, the special teaching of the wise and glorious king is complete at this point. Virtue, virtue, virtue. So that completes the entire instruction on the three statements of Garab Dorje that we've looked at the last 3 weeks. And the text is there. You can either get it in a different format from the Lotsawa House, and there's a translation website where you can get all kinds of things. It's a wonderful, wonderful website. Or you can also go to our website and go to the page which has the various resources, and I've set up a section in there now where these Dharma talks are there. And so you can find it in the format here that we have talked about for the last 3 weeks if you want to print that out, or just read it online, or save it as a file, whatever it works best for you. So now we want to conclude our practice here briefly. We go to page 6 in the prayer book. And we'll recite the blessing mantra or sing it here. Om Ahom Shri, 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 Om Ahom Shri. Long life prayers, for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. For this realm encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of every benefit and bliss without exception. Tenzin Gyatso, you who are one with Avalokiteshvara, may you remain steadfast until samsara's end. And then His Holiness Khenpo Lama Rinpoche, in the Dharma Dhatu, appearing as Amitabha, in the Sambhogakaya form as Wisdom Buddha Manjushri, Padmasambhava's heart son Sangye Yeshe, incarnated as Padma Limpa in previous life and Palje Badorje in this lifetime. May your life be longer than the duration of samsara, so that all your virtuous intentions can be accomplished. Please give me your heart blessings so that my mind is united with yours in the Buddha nature, so I pray. And then Khenpo Drimed Dawa, Imaho, you understand the knowable objects of samsara, great teacher. You have realized the intent of the sacred Dharma, Yogi Khenpo. Your Dharma practice is unification of the two. Khenpo Drimed Dawa, stainless moon, may you live long. And the wish for bodhicitta. Om Ahom Shri Ananta Benza Sawa Siddhi Pala Hom Ah. Glorious, precious root Lama, sit on the lotus seat on the crown of my head. With your great kindness, please accept me. Please bestow the realizations of body, speech, and mind. In all the activities of the glorious Lama, May no wrong view arise even for a moment. By the devotion of seeing whatever he or she does as perfect, may the blessing of the Lama enter my mind. Throughout the succession of my lives, from the perfect Lamas, may I never be separated, and enjoying the glory of the Dharma, perfect all qualities of the stages and the paths, and swiftly attain the stage of Vajradhara. The Lamas who have become the glory of the Dharma, may their lives be stable. May the land be entirely filled with doctrine holders. May the wealth and power of the patrons of the doctrine increase, and may the auspiciousness of the doctrine remain forever. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. I dedicate the merit of this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. I dedicate the merit of this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. I dedicate the merit of this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. So thank you for coming and being a part of our practice today in the last few weeks. So I hope that you found the instructions and Dharma talk to be helpful to you. Starting next week, I'm going to do a more elaborate version of some talks that I give periodically from the instruction of the practice manual. And so we're going to do the Nundro part of that and a little bit more elaborate version of the instructions on the Nundro starting next week, and it will take several weeks to do that, even though we practice it in about 10-15 minutes. It's very important in terms of really understanding the richness and the depth of what is involved in that. So we're going to start that for our Dharma talks for next week. And in terms of our practices, of course, Sunday next week, we will be doing that at the same time, 11 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time or Tucson time. And also on Wednesday, this Wednesday will be in Trauma Dakini practice, so we'll be doing it with a tsok, so you can bring something to share if you'd like to participate in that with us. And so those are the practices that we are doing right now, taking a little bit of time off. But we do have a class coming up, the Essentials 7 class, which begins, there's 2 of the 7 and 8, which cover the Dzogchen practices. So it relates very closely to this most recent Dharma talk on Garab Dorje. In fact, it's mentioned in there a little bit, not elaborated upon, but it is also there. And so we will start that on the Sunday of Labor Day, so the first Sunday of September coming up here. And that will be an in-person class, and we will be doing that starting at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. So we'll have an hour break basically between the morning time and the afternoon to start the other one. So please join us for that, those of you who can. If not, we do have a version of it also online that is available, so people can go to our website and sign up for that version if they would like to do that. So once again, thank you very much for being with us today. Abide softly and deeply in pure awareness, loving kindness, compassion for all sentient beings, always and always. Thank you very much.